Hello, it's another time out on the podcast, Truth to Power. Truth to Power is a podcast where we look at vulnerable, persecuted communities in Nigeria, most especially Middle Belt and Northern Nigeria, and their plight. And today on Truth to Power, we shall be looking at political exclusion and plight of minority communities in Northern Nigeria. Nigeria, I would say, is almost equally divided between Christians and Muslims. Most Christians are on the southern part of the country, while most Muslims are on the northern part of the country. Now, there is another segment of the country that is categorized as a middle belt. This middle belt is like a buffer region or a dividing point between the north and the south. While the north is predominantly said to be populated by Muslims, some other school of thought don't believe that. But one thing is that even in the north, as populated as it or with the understanding that it's populated by Muslims, there are quite a number of Christians there. And these Christians, some would want to categorize them as a middle belt. Though in the Nigerian constitution, we do not have any particular geographical demarcation that has been recognized as the middle belt of Nigeria. But the people on ground, and of course most Nigerians, have created that middle belt region in parts of Nigeria. I'm using the word parts of Nigeria because when you look at from the eastern part to the western part of Nigeria, there are minority communities that are not predominantly Muslim and are not predominantly Fulanis. They call themselves the minority groups or minority people of the middle belt of Nigeria. These are the persons that we are talking about today because they live in communities that have been politically excluded from the scheme of things in Nigeria. When we talk about political exclusion, this is a situation whereby the persons there are not allowed to participate fully in the politics of that region, and when people there are in one way or the other not allowed to also express their civic rights and responsibility, or when they are micromanaged to not be able to fully participate in political activities in that particular region. Now, for the benefit of those that are just getting to understand this particular talk today, I'd like to know what this is all about. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce my guest. He is a good governance advocate and one that has a very, very good knowledge of Nigeria, the geopolitical region, the people, the place, the tribes, the culture, and the religion. He is Danjuma Abbas Dangwa. Danjuma Abbas Dangwa, you're welcome to Truth to Power.
Thank you so much for having me, Ehis. I'm very happy to be with you on this program.
All right. Talking about Nigeria, first of all, what do you understand by the middle belt of Nigeria? Let's start from there.
Well, the middle belt, all the years have been the geo-cultural community that is not affiliated to the Fulani hegemony, also not affiliated or to the culture that is predominantly, Hausa or Fulani, which is mostly predominant in the northern parts of Nigeria. There are people defined by their culture, their food, their livelihood, the way of life. And also, of course, their liberties, in that they have various forms of religion. They are not just Christians, they are also not just practicing African traditional religion. Some of them, pockets of them, are also Muslims, but they are mostly defined by the language that they are more indigenous to. And for that, they see themselves more of a geocultural entity, well defined, within the context of the Middle Belt, being that they do not in any way, relate to the predominant West, East, Igbo, Yoruba cultures, and the South, and also not the predominant, Hausa Fulani cultures up north.
All right. And talking about exclusion of this minority group, some say it is not real. Is it real?
Well, I think that people who will say it's not real are likely to also say the moon is purple. Because yes, when you consider the deprivation economically, Nigeria is a nation that its economy is driven majorly, by government spending. In fact, where government is not budgeting enough for your community, automatically you're underdeveloped. Where government will not implement policies of national interest within your space, you're underdeveloped. And when you go across the space called the Middle Belt, you would find most of these issues of deprivation. In fact, you will find that the vulnerability is actually heightened mostly because of the neglect over the years in terms of budgetary spending, in terms of participation in government, in terms of participation also in governance. The deprivation is not usually out of a decision by the people not to participate or engage, but it's actually by the deliberate effort, of actors who find themselves in government, depriving them those spaces and also ensuring that their identity is undermined. And the struggle, to keep that identity alive is one of the prices they pay, is one of the prices they pay in the form of this exclusion they suffer.
Yes, you are watching Truth to Power, a podcast where we look at minority groups in Nigeria. And of course, on the program today, we are looking at political persecution and the plights of persons living in these minority communities. Now, still looking at the plight of these persons, what are the nature of the activities done by whoever in quote or persons in quote that results in these political exclusions?
Well, if you consider what Nigeria has been before the advent of social media and the development of the private media space, ordinarily we used to have what is predominantly government-owned media institutions, whether in the broadcast or print. And at that time, most of the plights affecting this community was mostly swept under the carpet. At that, we're talking about years of incessant violence, riots. In most instances, the victim is also the victim is also the culprit in most cases in the eyes of government, and the world would never have known what the situation is on ground. If you travel back through white papers that have mostly been contested, you will find that. And then there is also the dissemination of information. Information, is also power, because without information, you do not have the knowledge. Over the years, these are people who are being deprived access to information about budget, about governance, about whatever it is that government is working around for them. For instance, in one of the states, where you have predominant minority groups in the southern senatorial district, I learned at a point in time when I was engaging the institutions of the state about dissemination of information that relates to budgetary spending, appropriations and how budgets are formulated. The stations that the government was broadcasting such information was predominantly focused on the northern parts of the state and excluded totally the southern parts of the state. And at that, it meant that when you were in that region, you do not have the information that you need to make economic decisions, business decisions, political decisions that could improve, the community livelihoods and also the development of your space. And at that was deprivation. Besides that, there is also the level of exclusion when it comes to the appointment of political offices. In Nigeria, it matters a lot whether you have somebody in government or not, because again, having somebody in government means that you have somebody on the table that negotiates the issues on your behalf.
Yeah.
In most of the states, that deprivation is real. I can point to you that there are states where these minorities do not even have anyone who sits in the Federal Executive Council, especially within Nigeria as we have it today. Beyond that, we also have the situation where government provides interventions. Interventions are mostly targeting a particular group at the exclusion of such minorities. When you move away from the issue of government interventions or programs, you can also come to see that when you consider the issues around the workplace, promotions, who get promoted. I can tell you a lot of public spaces and offices where you find junior ranking officers overseeing even their superiors, because when you talk about years of service, how did this person get in? And these are not people who have failed to meet their promotional exams or anything, but they are just pegged at a particular limit from which they can never rise. And then beyond that, there is also the instrument of governance. You know that governance at grassroots level, we have what we call the local government systems. And you hear about local government autonomy. It has been a struggle right from 1999 till date. This local government.
You are talking about local government. Is it what else we call counties?
Yeah, we call them.
Like in the US, is it called a county?
County, yeah.
The lowest level of government.
What you have as a mayor, right, for instance, is what we call a local government council chairman here in Nigeria. And the case we have in Nigeria is a situation where the governor superintends this local government. They deprive the people the right to a working democracy. They deprive the people in most instances from even electing the people they know into office. When you look at the custodians of culture and tradition, reforms over the years have also continued to undermine and whittle down these minority groups, because even when they have the monarch system in their favor, government still continues to government in quote now talking about the people who are mostly going to win elections, mostly going to superintend government, mostly going to oversee the affairs of the people, in most instances undermine these people by ensuring that they have their own stooges, people who are in most cases not in the popular opinion of the people as their leaders, superintending their activities, superintending their affairs, like that. And then when you look at land administration, yes, the land belongs to the people, communities own the land, but in most cases, government will refuse to give certificate of ownership just so that these people who may need these certificates to have access to, finance, solutions and all other, means of development, be it industrialization, consider, for instance, agriculture, consider, for instance, urbanization, all of these things are being undermined. And when it comes to the budget, the budget is usually so skewed. You can really tell which part of Nigeria is underdeveloped. You just need to take a satellite imagery. And when you see the major towns, the big towns, where the investment in terms of public infrastructure is, whether schools, hospitals, roads, water supply, it is always targeting majority groups and excluding minority groups. And in most instances, that is why the vulnerability for these minority groups is quite high. But some way, somehow, education is at their favor. They are able to also build for themselves resilience to survive all of these onslaught and injustices because of just that they are determined to survive.
Yes. Truth to Power, I would say, is proudly supported by Truth Nigeria. Truth Nigeria is a website where you can discover the truth about Nigeria. Visit Truth Nigeria at www.truthnigeria.com. And Truth to Power also is a regular feature on the website of Truth Nigeria. We've been looking at political exclusion of minority communities in Nigeria. Before we wrap up the program, we'd also want to look at the areas of political delineation, that's marking out wards, counties, and all of that. How has this delineation been skewed against minority regions because of their political position?
It has been skewed against minority regions if you consider the fact that the Middle Belt is not recognized by the Nigerian government system. There is the Northwest, Northeast, North Central. There is the Southeast, Southwest, and also the South-South. But when it comes to the Middle Belt, it's a hush. And then when you consider the delineation of wards, local government, you will find that in most instances, the effort, in fact, the effort is usually, to subsume some of these minority groups under the dictates and the domination of the majority communities. And you can also see the same issue when it comes to the delineation of senatorial districts, people who, from where you vote senators, or even when you come down to constituencies where you vote the federal legislatures that we call House of Representatives. In other climes we call them congressmen, or this lower house in federal parliament. parliament. And so the representation is usually one that is skewed. When you look at the population that makes up a local government in some of these minority enclaves, it is actually not at par with what is obtainable where the other predominant Hausa, Fulani empires or emirates at space. And then when it comes down to also the nation of polling units, well, in fact, you would find more voters having to vote in one polling booth than you would find in minority spaces that you would find anywhere else in Nigeria.
And wrapping it up now, we'd also want to look at the traditional governance system. Most of this minority group had their monarchical style of governance.
Yeah.
And in recent time, you discover that in some spaces, places where before now had their the monarchical system sort of have now been subsumed under the emirate system.
Well, yeah, so for as long as I have lived, for instance, when you go to a state like Kaduna, you will find that the chairman of the traditional councils of chiefs in the state is usually an emir. And it has never shifted from anyone. And let me tell you again, for people who may not know, there used to be Kaduna Capital Territory. Kaduna Capital Territory was carved out by the colonial empire, by the colonialists then Britain. And since Britain governed northern Nigeria from Kaduna and carved out Kaduna Capital Territory, it was inherited as part of an entity belonging to the federal government.
Yeah.
It was during the administration of the military administration of Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, retired general, army general, that this enclave, which is now constituting about 4 to 5 local governments, was ceded to an emir or an emirate. And since then, I can tell you, for a space that did not recognize such monarchical system, it has not been well. We've seen the situation where indigenous groups within this area have continued to be sacked out of their communities through very violent terrorist activities and the occupation of, in fact, in most instances, foreigners from outside Nigeria, especially with the fact that people up the North Nigeria do not see themselves having any borders at all with Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, including Chad.
Wow, you've had it. Indeed, the persecution of minority groups in Nigeria is real. And today we have looked at it from another angle that we can call political persecution, but coined it as exclusion of minority groups by the majority group in Nigeria. With what we are exposing, we believe that the whole world can better understand the configuration called Nigeria, and of course Nigerians can better understand this configuration and work out a way that we can all live together in peace and unity. It's been True to Power. I want to say a very big thank you to my guest today. It's been Danjuma Abbas Dangwa. Thank you so very much for having that.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that we'll have time sometime in the future to really x-ray some of these topical issues in depth.
We'll try our best. My name is Ehis Agbon. Until next time, I want to tell you that True to Power is proudly supported by Truth Nigeria. And would always say, speak the truth to power, and of course, the truth will definitely set you free.
Are you seeking the truth about Nigeria? Look no further than Truth Nigeria, your reliable source for unbiased news and insightful analysis. Explore truthnigeria.com for the real stories that matters, from governance to international politics. Uncover the reality behind the headlines. Truth Nigerians, where facts meet clarity. Discover the truth about Nigeria today. Visit truthnigeria.com now.